Hey everyone, before we get started, thank you so much to all of you that have become Extras members through my Buy Me a Coffee account. The extra money that I'm getting from that each month is helping towards the sustainability of the podcast and chips away some at those extra expenses that I have every month continuing to keep this podcast going. So it is helping quite a bit, and hopefully more people will continue to jump on board over time. So far, I think I've got about 18 or 19 people that have signed up, and it's definitely helping with some of the gas money and odds and ends extra maintenance stuff that I incur every month with the continuation of the podcast. So for those of you that have signed up, thank you again so much. And there's going to be some more bang for your buck coming pretty soon. Hopefully within the coming months, you'll have access to even more cool stuff on top of the Falconry Follies and Molting Tales episodes and things like that. So for those of you that have been on the fence, you might want to go ahead and join up soon. There's going to be some more cool stuff coming your way. If you haven't signed up yet and are interested, just head to my website at falconrychronicles.com. Click on the Would You Like to Support link, and you can sign up there. I greatly appreciate it, and the more people that sign up, the more I'm going to be able to definitely keep the sustainability of this podcast going well into the future. So thank you all again so much, and I hope you're enjoying the new content. And now, on to this next episode of the Falconry Chronicles podcast.
The jerkin was flying really high, and we were going to go down this hill and flush this grouse. And he stooped before we ever got anywhere near the grouse and the dog. And he stooped behind us, went way up a hill, came in at ground level, and just fluttered over and landed on a grouse about 30 feet behind us. And just, he was watching this grouse the whole time. and he wasn't going to have the one the dog was pointing. The grouse never even got to fly. He just landed on it. So there's, jerkins can do some fantastic things. So there's a lot of things that, that a lot of experiences I had with jerkins that, I wouldn't get with peregrines.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the Falconry Chronicles podcast, and this is either going to be the last or one of the last couple of episodes that I recorded while I was in Wyoming working earlier in 2024, and it seems nuts that was almost a year ago now, but I've had such a backlog, as you all know. I was finally able to get all these Wyoming episodes out to you and been really happy with that. Hopefully you all have enjoyed hearing from a lot of these falconers that have had a wealth of knowledge over the years and have been in the sport since its early inception here in the U.S. So this episode, though, is going to be a familiar name to some of you. For those of you that have done a lot of business with Western Sporting, well, this is the owner, David Frank, that I had a chance to catch up with while I was in Sheridan. And after recording with him, I was able to head over to the Western Sporting HQ and check out the warehouse and all that kind of good stuff, and showed me around and everything. And it was really fun getting a chance to get to know him a little bit better, since I've done quite a bit of business with Western Sporting in the past, and also bought a lot of books that have been published by David. So anyway, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into this episode so you can hear some of the cool stories and experiences that he's had over the years. And for those of you that haven't done any business with Western Sporting, you can head to westernsporting.com, and they've got all kinds of really good quality stuff. So please consider giving him some of your business if you haven't already. I know he's done a lot to support state clubs and donated lots of items for state club raffle items and things like that, including our club here in Indiana, the Indiana Falconers Association. So please consider giving him some of your business. And in the meantime, enjoy this episode and hearing some of the experiences of David Frank. Here we go. I'm glad that I reached out to you. I mean, I know we were just kind of talking about that, and I appreciate Matt kind of being the go-between there and making that introduction, and so I mean, thanks for joining me this morning to kind of wrap up this productive week that I've had so far up here.
Well, my pleasure. I didn't really know what podcasts were, and
A lot of people don't. It's all good.
So it was a learning experience for me. But I know that there's a lot of it going on, and people listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, podcasts have turned into the main form of media absorption by people. I mean, even more so than your major news outlets these days. And the beautiful thing about it is, I mean, it's really become the best way for people to get all kinds of different viewpoints and coverages on literally any topic in the world that you can think of. Somebody probably is producing their own podcast on. So whether or not all of it is accurate or true or whatever, I mean, that's always up to you to decipher for yourself. But I mean, it's so easy now to get so many different ways to listen to so many different people talking about so many different things, and it's just a touch of your fingertips, napping on your phone or whatever the case is.
I asked one of my employees, do you know what a podcast is? And he's very much into country music. So he said, oh yeah. He said, I listen to podcasts about the background lives of some of my favorite country stars. And so he said, I get to know about their personal lives through podcasts. So he said, I listen to them, quite often.
Yeah.
So that was, I went, oh, okay, I get it now.
Well, and that goes back to the whole point of this podcast is, it became apparent, all those years ago. I mean, well, not all those years ago. It's technically only been like 5 years ago when we started initially doing these, that there's people that were making videos and some odds and ends things. Of course, people publish books and all this kind of stuff, but there really wasn't a main or a well-established media platform for falconers to really, on record in an audio format that people can listen to, talk about their stories, their experiences, and what better way for people to listen and learn from all these different people that have been in our sport for so long. And sometimes even the newer people have good things to offer too. So, yeah. So, I mean, that was my motivation to start doing this and, just kind of help spread the stories of falconry. And since then, it's kind of, been nice to be able to also share the stories of people's falconry from across the world too. So, yeah. But, I mean, all that being said, as far as you're concerned, I mean, remind me again how long you've been in Sheridan now?
30 years here.
30 years?
That's the longest time I've been in any one place in my life.
Nice. Okay. Well, so I mean, where were you at before here then?
I lived in England for about 8 years.
Oh, okay.
And I was a curator of birds at a bird zoo and an animal training consultant for London Zoo and Whipsnade. And I worked 8 months out of the year, and then I took the rest of the year off to go to Scotland to go fishing and falconry and all of that. And so I took the fall off, and I worked basically during the tourist season when all those places had all their visitation. And so that was a good time. And before that, I worked for the San Diego Zoo, and I was an animal trainer and in charge of the bird show at the Wild Animal Park for several years. Okay. So, and just one thing just led to another. Someone came to the San Diego Zoo and said, "What are you doing right now?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm doing this." No, actually, I was on a trip to Europe, and I stopped in Leeds Castle in Kent, and the managing director there was the managing director of the San Diego Zoo, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm just taking a trip." He said, "You want a job?" And I thought, if I don't take a job in England, pack up everything and just come here in suitcases, I'm crazy, right? Because I will always regret not doing it. So, so I knew him from San Diego, and so then I ended up in England working at Leeds Castle, and I took my entire collection of parrots over there, and that created the basis for that zoo. Okay. So that was a good 8 years, and I really enjoyed Scotland every year, and I flew gerfalcons and peregrines and on red grouse.
Very cool. Well, and during that time frame, then was that still before, whenever you had any other kind of family obligations or any other obligations in your life then that you, I mean, obviously you were able to just kind of pick up and go. So, I mean, I'm assuming you didn't really have too many ties at that point then.
Well, you know, I left the San Diego Zoo and then I was like, but I thought, well, I'll take this job. And I was married, but I didn't have children. Okay. So we had our children in England on the National Health System, which was quite an experience. And so I just came to England with my wife, and we just brought suitcases. That's it. We just said, okay, we're going. Because, you know, we will regret this if we don't. So we have to do it. And as a result of that, I met the Queen. I met, you know, a lot of royals. And, well, you know, I was the American with a funny accent that spoke the same language. So they always pushed me out in front. And so I got a lot of airtime in terms of who I met and the types of things I had the pleasure of doing. Okay.
Well, that's really interesting. Yeah, I admire people, or at least have a good measure of respect for people that, for lack of better, I guess, terms, are that ballsy, so to speak. You know, that takes a lot of fortitude to be able to just, you know, have the guts to pick up and move like that.
Yeah, and well, had it been a foreign language, I think I may not have done it. I don't know. Yeah. But
it's understandable.
Yeah, they speak English with a funny accent. So,
I've been fortunate to be over in the UK and for a brief period of time and make some friends over there and stuff. So yeah, depending on where you go, I mean, some accents are a little bit harder to understand than others.
Oh but. Yeah, I knew these falconers on the east side of London. You know and they're. That's where Cockney rhyming slang comes from. And my father-in-law came over, and I took him out to see some hawks being flown. And at the end of the day, he said, David, he said, that was very interesting. It was kind of like being in the military because I understood every third word.
Well, and I've had a lot of fun at some of my Scottish friends' expense as well. I had the good fortune to meet one buddy in particular, Kevin Robertson. He's a falconer from Scotland and has a bird of prey center and stuff. And every time he makes a social media post, and every once in a while I'll comment or whatever. But I told him, man, you really need to maybe strongly think about putting subtitles, like in a lot of your videos. Right. Yeah, but
some of the accents are very strong, and some of them are very mild.
Yeah,
all over the whole country.
Right. Yeah. Love you, Kevin, by the way, if you're listening, which I'm sure you probably will at some point. But anyway, yeah, no, I mean, good people over there, though. You know, I mean, I'm like I said, I've really been fortunate that, I mean, no matter pretty much where I've gone in the world, I've been very surprised and humbled by how a lot of our community is all across the world.
Right.
But so talk about some of your other experiences. You said you met the Queen and all this other stuff while you were over there. I mean, what was some of the other cool stuff that you did while you were over there?
I met her as a result of a grand opening at the London Zoo. They put a bunch of money into the zoo and enhanced these exhibits. And it's really interesting meeting someone like that because I don't think everything that the Queen does is scripted, but that was a very scripted day. They actually closed the zoo and brought in school kids in buses. And it was like the entire day at the London Zoo was rehearsed, if you will.
Okay.
And so I had I had a rehearsal so they could tell me, you know, what you can and cannot say to the Queen and how you should act and hold yourself. And then I had a dress rehearsal, and then we had the actual day. So it's pretty amazing the background work that goes into meeting someone like that in a venue like that. I think you see him going down the street shaking hands and that sort of thing, and I think that's different. But in a situation like that, it was very well scripted and very put together. And
yeah, I'm guessing that you'd almost have to do that. I'm sure it's probably not too much different than a lot of the presidential encounters that we have in our country and stuff like that too. I mean, yeah, whenever you've got that much security and other details going on, I'm sure that they want to be it to be with the least amount of surprises as humanly possible. But,
exactly. Yeah. So I had a couple macaws that I was flying at this event, and I wanted to give the queen the impression that one of my macaws was flying away and I was losing control of it. So what I did was I gave it a little token, and I taught it to fly up to a tree and put it in a little bucket up there in the tree. And I tied this little container in the tree and then fly back. And so it would go back and forth and back and forth. So when the queen and Prince Philip walked up, I had the bird fly away, and then they would look at it, and then it would come back. But what I didn't realize was that on the actual day, there was going to be a wall of about 150 Fleet Street reporters with flashing cameras. So when the bird flew out, it flew into a wall of flashing cameras, and it really freaked it out. But somehow or another, it managed to stay on course and then come back to me. And when it came back, it had to winnow in from above because it couldn't fly straight to me because there were too many people around on the actual day. So it had to winnow in to me and land on my hand, but it did the job perfectly. So it was quite amazing.
Very cool. Yeah, it's funny because we always joke as falconers that anytime you have a bunch of people that come and want to hunt with you, or times during meets or whatever the scenario is, when there's all of a sudden a bunch of people around to spectate what you're doing, that's obviously going to be the time that anything and everything goes wrong, right?
Yeah, there's a multiplier. The number of people multiplies it by them and X. Yeah. And then things will go wrong.
Right. Sure. Yeah. There's definitely some kind of algebraic formula in there. I'm not really sure what it is, but, but yeah, I can only imagine, some of the different scenarios with, the animal shows and things like that people have talked to a few people that have done things like that before. And yeah, they say that there's usually always something that comes up occasionally, right. Just this X factor, so to speak. But, well, I mean, so whenever you were doing all this stuff over there, I mean, were you facing any challenges at any point with trying to work in your own falconry during that stuff?
I've tried to fly hawks down south in England, and I could fly peregrines there, but I like jerkins. I like falcons, and there's too many wild pigeons down in the south for one to fly. I suppose you can, but basically the best place to fly a falcon in England is in Scotland, or Yorkshire, or somewhere where there's red grouse. And it's my understanding the red grouse numbers have really plummeted. A lot of that's due to planting of trees and windmills and all the things that we know about. So I was there during a great time because there were still grouse on the landscape, and a good number.
Yeah, and it's not just red grouse that they've been having some issues with, and they've also been trying to combat legislation over there with hunting mountain hares and things like that too. It's the landscape in the UK in general, and especially Scotland. Even when I was over there a couple of years ago, it's really starting to change. At least that's from what I've understood from my outsider looking in perspective. But
the politics of hunting over there is a problem, and a lot of people, liberals don't like it over there, and they actually hire college students to go disrupt hunting events. And fox hunting is a very contentious thing. Falconry could be, because historically speaking, and going back, cockfighting and badger baiting and all the things that took place over the centuries, the activities where there's one animal pitted against another, those seem to be the first targets. And fox hunting from horseback is just such a gala, such a pretentious thing that these people, and it's huge. And they're trying to stop that, and they're trying to stop chasing hares. And I think they've done that. So that sort of gives us a a window into what might happen in America in the future.
Well, sure, yeah, and I agree, and that's one thing that we always have to be conscientious of is that, and I've talked about with many people many different times, is that it's just one of those things where we have to understand that any of this stuff can just go away at any minute.
That's
basically.
right.
Yeah, and I mean, I would have to kind of I don't know. I would have to get back in contact with some of my buddies over there and see where things are at currently with some of that stuff. I'm sure there's even been more changes over the last couple of years. So, I don't know. I mean, we both could be, potentially off base on current events with some stuff up there. But I mean, like I said, it's one of those things where it's always constantly changing.
Well,
so
fishing and hunting make a lot of money for the states, individual states. But falconry is kind of a thorn in their side, and it's hard to manage, and there's a lot of rules, and really, it's shocking to think about it, but falconry could go away with a stroke of a pen. It really could.
It has in other countries.
Yeah. So we have to really be proactive and do everything to make it legitimate going forward. The Archives of Falconry is a great thing to help do that. And NAFA, the national organization, does a lot of good work, and they have a lot of contacts. But still, political environments change.
It's it's constant. There's always something that comes up, and anyway, before we get too much on a doom and gloom path,
Okay, sorry about that.
No. It's just like I said. There's not. I mean, it never hurts to be discussed because there's always a handful of things that kind of constantly get rediscussed or touched on in these, and there's a reason for that. People need to understand and not take for granted a lot what we have, number one, but even for the people that are considering getting into this, they need to understand what all the challenges are coming into it also. And before we get too much further, I guess that's a good segue into, I want to go ahead and hear, kind of what initially got you into falconry in the first place and hear about kind of your story with that.
Okay. I suppose everybody has a story about what opened their eyes or the door to falconry. And when I was a kid in grammar school, I could get copies of Field and Stream. And in the back of Field and Stream, you could order a gerfalcon, a peregrine, a bear, a mountain lion. You could buy all these things as little babies. And so that was a real eye-opener to me. And then I could go to the library back then, and the library had a lot of falconry books. Those have been since become very valuable, and they're no longer in the library. So I just became interested, through that sort of thing. And then there was a lady down the way that had these chickens, and there was a red-tailed hawk with real long jesses on it. Someone tried their hand at falconry, it didn't work, and it was killing her chickens. And so, when I remember, I don't remember, I was in like third or fourth grade or something like that, and I would go hide in her chicken loft after school, waiting for this red-tailed hawk to come down and kill a chicken, because I knew it would be tame enough once I got it right in front of me, and I didn't know how to trap, that I could probably go over and pick it up. And so that was my first, attempt at falconry.
Sure.
And then I had a kestrel and different things like that. So that was my first introduction to it. And then I met a guy who's now the curator of birds at the San Diego Zoo, and he helped mentor me in falconry as a teenager. So all of us have these brushes with birds of prey and falconry, and then at some point, I knew I needed someone to help me. I knew I couldn't just go get a hawk and pull it off without, breaking the whole thing somehow or another.
Right.
So I waited until I found someone to help me. And then from then on, so it was all good.
Cool. Well, so, and if you were able to have that kind of mentorship in that area when so you're originally from California then?
Yeah, Southern California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so you were there for a while then, and then that's kind of where the eventual opportunity to kind of go overseas and work over there. And
well, I grew up in Southern California.
Right.
And I was a surfer, of course.
Okay.
And I used to go down to the cliffs, what's called the cliffs in Huntington Beach, and surf there. But later I went to the cliffs and flew my hawk back and forth along the cliffs, during the day when the thermals were going. But I started there, and then I went to the San Diego Zoo. So I knew a couple of guys that were animal trainers on for television shows and things like that. And then this fellow named Ray Berwick needed someone at the San Diego Zoo, and he did the Birdman of Alcatraz and Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, and he did all those. And so he hired me to actually work at the San Diego Zoo. I wasn't really working for the zoo. I was working for a contract. And so that subsequently opened the door for me to go to England.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm keeping my timeline straight, man. Sometimes people have such a diverse, background and, all over the place. I like making sure that I'm getting things straight. So, no, that's really cool though. I mean, what an opportunity for a young, more or less a young kid. I mean, that's nuts.
And I just got married and she was thrilled. Oh, we're going to England?
Yeah, well, I mean, kudos to you all though. I mean, you picked the perfect time in your lives to do it. I mean, when you didn't have any other obligations and everything else. I really like I said, I'm envious of people that fall into those situations like that, because I mean, when I discovered falconry, I was already married and had a kid and had a established career in a certain area, and it makes things more difficult, to juggle.
What does it take to be a good falconer? You have to either be broke and have all the time in the world at your hands, or you have to have already accomplished yourself and have money, resources, and all the time in the world.
Sure.
And both of them can be great falconers. People that have a life and have responsibilities in between, sometimes it doesn't work so well because falconry does take a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's a lot of responsibility and once again, time, effort, and energy, and a lot of times, in a lot of people's cases, money, because, sometimes people don't live in the best areas for what they're trying to do and have to spend lots of money on gas and time driving to different places. And it's a good question. And that's one of the age-old questions, one of the many, in the falconry community is what does make a good falconer and good falconry? And every person's definition of that is going to be different. It's all subjective.
And I published Hal Webster and Beebe's book, North American Falconry, this last time. And, that's one thing Hal always drilled into me. He said, you have to, if you want to fly a certain type of hawk, then you have to go where that hawk lives and fly. You can't, be in Southern California and fly a gerfalcon. You've got to go to where the falconry is good, and you have to have the resources to do it. So you can either move somewhere, or you can spend your time traveling there. One or the other.
Yeah. I mean, there's always been. I mean, there's been some. I don't want to say exceptions to the rule, but I mean, there's been some people that have been able to find different niches here and there. But regardless, it still seems to take a little bit more oomph, so to speak, to make it work.
It's getting more and more difficult all the time.
Sure.
Even if we're in Wyoming here, and as an example, when I lived in England, there were 70 million people living there, and that had a footprint of about, 3/4, 7/8 the size of Wyoming, 70 million people. And yet there was still good falconry up in the north. And here we are in Wyoming with 500,000. And we have areas where falconry is not as good as it once was. The grouse numbers are down. It seems like every time you turn around, there's a new disease that affects game birds and rabbits. And it's just like these designers, West Nile virus and all these things come along and out of nowhere and just, devastate the grouse numbers. our sage grouse are closed in this part of the state right now, and game birds are at a bit of a low right now due to a number of issues, grazing and mineral extraction and a whole variety of things. But falconry usually gets, punished first with lack of season and low ability to catch less game, less quarry.
Well, and the simple reality is there's less of us to advocate for it to be otherwise too. And like you said, I mean, there's for the resources that are available to most fishing game place, like divisions in the government and things like that. I mean, they already the priority is going to go to the big game stuff and the stuff that makes them a lot more money rather than us. I mean, it's understandable. I mean, it's just a simple numbers game.
That's right.
Yeah.
But, so I'm not flying a hawk right now. I've got my falconry business, which I really enjoy going to work every day and helping people with good equipment and books and things like that. We're, well known for our publishing of quality falconry books, and I get to help people a lot. But right now I'm not flying a hawk because the game numbers quarry numbers are down, game birds are down, and it's getting harder and harder to even access land in Wyoming because of outfitters hunting deer and a whole variety of different pressures on the landscape. And so you have to drive further. So here I am in Wyoming now, and I have to drive, maybe 3 hours to get a good slip for my hawk, and then 3 hours back. So there goes the day. Yeah. Right?
Sure.
And so I suppose you can get smaller hawks and fly different types of quarry around town, but that's what you're left with. And so that sounds very, downtrodden, but
well, I mean, it's
just a reality.
Yeah, and it's becoming more and more of a reality across the country, and I've had many a conversation about this as well. I mean, and jokingly, a lot of us have been like, well, I mean, if you don't like squirrel hawking, you don't like starlings, well, and catching starlings, well, eventually you're going to have to start liking it because that's eventually it's going to be what the abundance is for falconry that's left, But yeah, I mean, I've been told by some of the other guys this week and stuff, especially around Sheridan here and everything. A lot of it's becoming more and more privatized and stuff. And if you don't have permissions on some of those different areas and things like that, it's becoming harder. And especially like you said with the sage grouse situation and things like that. I mean, your options are becoming limited in certain areas more and more for sure. Yeah.
Well, it used to be that we were really well endowed with quarry. All sorts of quarry, and we didn't have any hawks. And then hawks started becoming, produced in captivity. And so now we've got all the hawks in the world, and our quarry is at a low. Yep. So it's flipped completely.
Yep.
Yep. But you're right. Starlings and squirrels and rabbits, when they're at a high in their cycle, are good, and certain places are better than others. You have to and that's what Hal Webster always said. You get the hawk that is good for the quarry you have in the place that you live. Don't try to get something that there's nothing to fly it on.
Sure.
So, if it's a sharpshin or it's a Cooper's hawk or it's a Harris hawk or whatever, it doesn't have to be a big long wing,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, otherwise it goes back to the whole square peg round hole theory, and you're just going to be spinning your wheels and your bird's going to not be very happy either. And yeah, I mean, once again, it's another one, one of those things just keeps coming up more and more. And I think we all realize that pretty soon, if not even now, in some places, I mean, it's kind of a crossroads, with a lot of things. And I mean, I'm like a lot of people. I don't know what the best answer for a lot of it is, or what you can really do to kind of stem the tide, so to speak.
Right.
But it's, I guess, just part of the reality of life and ever evolving circumstances.
You just have to get the hawk that's good for the quarry you have at hand.
Yeah,
that's the simple answer.
Yeah. For sure. Well, and kind of going back to the timeline of things for yourself then, I mean, what was the kind of the decision and the process involved with you deciding to come back to the States then?
Well, it was when my children were born in England,
Mm-hmm.
and at that point they were about 7 or 8 years old, and in the beginning it was, when they were little that was okay, but it got to a point where extended family and roots started to become more important in terms of children, going to middle school and high school. It's not a very good time to move children around. So it was time to plant ourselves somewhere where they could have access to family and have a good community. And Wyoming was a great place. It still is. It's a great place to live. And the community is good, and it was really a good thing for the children to grow up here. Mm-hmm. It really was.
So, was some of your more extended family still in California at the time, though?
I have some in California, and there's some on the East Coast and some in Florida. They're in various places, but we still have access to them, and we can go see them and visit them. But, from England, on occasion, people would come and see us because it's a unique place to go. But we didn't. I could see the point. It was time to develop some roots for the children's sake.
Gotcha.
And that's fine.
Were they starting to speak in more of a British accent and stuff as well?
My son had, they went to a private school. And so, they developed very posh accents. And when he came back and went to school here, my son got picked on and mimicked.
Yeah.
So his accent went away incredibly fast. When you're the subject of that, your accent, you'll force your accent to go away quickly. And that's too bad because, he had a very posh British accent for a little boy. But the other kids wouldn't leave him alone. So
yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's probably times where he can occasionally pull it back if he tries hard enough.
If he wants to. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I figured that might be kind of a thing. I mean, kids are so mean, man.
Oh yeah, they're tough on each other. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, and so whenever you moved back then, I mean, how long was it before you decided that, hey, I really want to start my own business? Or, I mean, did you do anything before you decided to do that?
Well, I wanted to publish a book, a single book. And a lot of falconers do that. And that, for them, that probably they have their title and their book, and then they try to figure out how to market it. And it becomes a real job. But for me, I thought, I've got the momentum here. Maybe I should try expanding out into other literature. So I went, mainly it was falconry books in the beginning because I knew how to design on a computer and how to get printing done, and I could plug the books into my marketing system. But then that led to equipment also later on. So it's just evolved. It's just evolved over the years, and I've been doing it, I don't know, for close to 30 years now. And in the beginning, the growth was phenomenal. It grew so fast that it left no money in the bank. Once you get like 15% growth, then the growth in the company consumes the cash. And if you want to grow past that, you almost have to borrow. So right now, we're at a point now to where my growth is a little bit less. It's under 10%. And when it's under 10%, then, right, everything works. So I think that's probably what happens to really big companies. They grow too fast and they can't keep up with the cash demands. And so you can't keep the people hired and that sort of thing. I have at Western Sporting, we have just 3 people, 4 with myself, and all of them are, all of them love their job. And the guys that are in the warehouse, they're sort of retired. They're retired guys, and they just love coming to work every day, getting away from home and doing something. Yeah. And they both have talents. I got one guy that's a fisherman, and he's great with knots and different things, and he makes all the traps. And he's a fantastic trap maker. More guys have trapped hawks on his traps than any other trap out there, I think. And the other guy's he's just good at it. It doesn't matter what he puts his hand at. And he's retired, and he just comes in, and anything I ask him to do, he does it. And I could use 2 more of those actually. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's hard finding people that are like that though in that kind of situation.
Right. Yeah. Well, guys retire and then they go, oh, this is boring.
I have no purpose.
Yeah. I need to find a job.
Right.
And so I've offered them jobs that they really like doing. So it's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
Yeah. Well, and so you didn't have to kind of meander or kind of stumble through anything before you started the business, though. I mean, was it pretty immediate once you got back here, though?
Well, I took some graphics classes on designing books and making books.
Okay.
And then I worked on that one book, and then in the meantime, after I moved back to Southern California for about a year.
Okay.
While I was looking around the West, trying to figure out, where this place was going to be. Mm-hmm. The grammar school in Southern California had when we came back and we were there for a year, they had a metal detector for, kids coming into school for knives or what, I don't know what for, but they had to go through a metal detector. I thought, this is very strange. We've got to get out of here. And I looked around at different states and the tax situation. Wyoming doesn't have a state income tax. That's a plus. Mm-hmm. And it had lots of quarry at the time. And so it was a great little community, for the kids to go to school and grow up. Yeah. So during that year, I took some time to research and tried to, plant myself somewhere where I could have good falconry and good family life.
Cool. Yeah, everybody's got their own motivations for doing different things. I sure don't blame you for the decision of getting out of a state that's got like 500,000 billion% income tax versus like zero. I mean, I'm always envious of the people that I know that live in some of these different, like, I guess there's a handful, somewhere 7, 8, something like that, at least states that don't have any state income tax.
Right. I think there's just a half dozen or so. Yeah.
Yeah, not very many. I know there's Nevada's one, Wyoming, Florida, Texas. Right. I know there's a few more that I'm not remembering.
And all the states that don't have a state income tax, they have sources of revenue. Mm-hmm. And Wyoming, it's the taxes on mineral extraction from this state that feed the state coffers. And I'm sure the same in Texas and in Nevada. It's entertainment, and so they all have a source of income. And so I send products to places like Brazil and Europe, and some of those places have between 25 and 50% customs, duties, and taxes for things coming in because they don't have a source of revenue to fund the government, if you will.
Sure.
So, so Wyoming just happens to be a pretty good place to live, and it's a great place to live. The winters can be a little brutal.
Yeah. It's probably the big reason why I don't think I could probably ever live anywhere in Wyoming, just simply because I'm not a very big overall winter person.
Right.
And I've had to work down in Rock Springs a few different times now, and it's just not my thing. But right. I mean, I don't get me wrong. Certain areas of Wyoming are beautiful, and I totally can see the appeal for falconry in a lot of different places here. But just the 2 months of summer and just a brutal like 40 to 60 mile per hour winds like every other day and stuff.
And sometimes sometimes we get a mild winter, and sometimes we look around right now and we think it might be over, but it might not be.
Yeah. My guess, my money would probably be on not.
Yeah. We got one big one coming.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But, well, I mean, and so in your early days, whenever falconry was more plentiful around here, were you still pretty much stuck on gyr-falcons that you wanted to fly?
Yeah.
I mean, what were you?
I like jerkins. I like the male gyr-falcon, and they're just so intelligent, and they're so powerful, and they're it's like flying the dog. It's just a great thing to do, and they eat up the sky. And peregrines are nice, but they're not quite as powerful. And I had a period of time where I had some hybrids, and I was trying those, and I went away from them. I can't even tell you why, but I would I would pick a peregrine or a gyrfalcon over a hybrid now, and I have no idea why. They're excellent hawks, and they apply themselves well to everything that these falconers task them to. But I like gyrfalcons, and this is a good place to fly them.
Yeah,
this is a good place to fly them because of the weather and the quarry and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the really northern states like Wyoming, Montana, those kind of areas. I mean, if you're going to try and fly a gyrfalcon with the least amount of resistance, these are the kind of states to do them in. I mean, it naturally gets cold most of the year. I mean, you don't have to fight a lot of the innate things that naturally want to just kill gyrfalcon, except for, of course, for the eagles. You know, we'll get into that. But
right. And I've lost a few hawks to eagles.
Yeah,
I think anybody that flies in Wyoming probably has.
Yeah.
And that's I flew a jerkin for 10 years, and one day it got killed by an eagle. 4 eagles on it at once, and I think eagles they look at gyrfalcons and they just hate them. They have a innate hatred for a gyrfalcon, where if they see a peregrine or a hybrid or something like that, they don't have that same disdain towards it. I don't know why that is. It could be quarry based. They don't want them in their environment or something. I don't know what it is, but they definitely are magnetized to gyrfalcons.
Well, and who knows? I mean, I actually had this topic of conversation with one of the other guys earlier this week, and I don't know, maybe it's just because they're not used to seeing them as much. I mean, they see peregrines a lot more than they do gyrfalcons around here. I guess they may just think they're just more of it, like you said, a threat to their territory more so than these peregrines that they see all the time or something. Who knows? But
we probably have, during the migration for golden eagles, I think we have about 500,000 people in Wyoming, and I heard a number one time that we have as many golden eagles in Wyoming as we do people. So that's a lot of eagles migrating through. We might only have 5,000 or 10,000 resident pairs, but they funnel through here from the north.
Yeah, I mean, it would make me nervous.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's hazards. No matter where you live, there's always certain innate hazards that that you have to face pretty much anywhere you live. So I guess that's just one of them that you got to live with when you're here.
Right.
But well, I mean, so it's pretty much already been or pretty much always been, gyrs for you. And I mean, is there a particular kind of quarry that you've always favored more than others, or is it?
I prefer, upland grouse, sharp-tails or sage grouse. Sharp-tails, I like them a little better. Ducks are okay, but they're not as challenging as and they don't challenge the actual hawk as much as upland game. And upland game gets a gyrfalcon or all long wings gets them very excited. They, when they see the flash of those wings, they want it bad. So that it really challenges them. Okay. And again, our populations are, it might, everybody keeps saying, well, it could come back, but I think with, there's a lot of state land, and the cattle industry gets leasing of those lands, and I think they see that they have cattle, and they're basically grass farmers, and they harvest their grass with cows, with livestock. So, wasted blade of grass is just that, and so they have a tendency to graze it down to nothing. And that's my own, I have to preface that by saying that's part of my own prejudice towards the cattle industry and what I see them doing to state land, right? And also too, mineral extraction is a big thing, because there's poles everywhere to feed those platforms with electricity, and all of those get perched on by eagles and hawks and things that would take out, grouse.
Sure.
So there's a lot of development that, and a lot of people, those industries feel like, well, that's the best place to do that because there's really nothing out there. But, it's some of the most beautiful landscape and, and animals left in the West.
Sure.
And it just keeps getting chopped up.
Well, and it all goes back to the ever-evolving challenges of cohabitating with other people and industries and trying to find common ground, and ways to mitigate a lot of those things. I mean, that's why it's important for people to understand that there's always a role to be played, in some way, shape, or form. And I mean, we have to be we have to be active. Sure.
We have to be active with those that would use the resource unwisely and do what we can. But it's a big job.
Yeah.
It's a real big job.
Yeah.
So Wyoming's still a great place for me. And I'm getting on in age a little bit. And, Wyoming's still a great place to live, and I love it here.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There are some times in the middle of the winter where I say, you know what? I think I'd like to live somewhere where the snow's gone by dinner time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like I said, everybody evolves as people, over time. And, like I said, it's one of those things where, all our preferences and the things that we like when we're younger, sometimes change when we get older and all that. But I mean, before we talk about your business a little bit more, I'm curious though, was there anything else that you really enjoyed doing back in those training days that you got to do? Or
I've flown a variety. I've flown Harris Hawks and red tails, and I've flown a lot of different types of hawks. And I lived in Southern California at a time when they were taking away the Harris Hawk in California, and there were a lot of falconers back then that had Harris Hawks, and I really enjoyed going out and watching them fly and seeing 8 or 10 hawks in the sky at the same time and bombing out of the sky and catching rabbits. So that was a great introduction to falconry, that and red tails and that sort of thing. So that was a very good start and a very good introduction to falconry for me. And it made sure that, I would never hang up a glove, so to speak.
Well, and like whenever you had some of those early just experiences with, the zoo and training and all that, I mean, you got a chance to do some other pretty cool things, make appearances on other type of stuff, right? I mean, what were some of those things?
Well, when I was at the San Diego Zoo, we had all these trained birds, and there were some local television shows, and so we could take those birds on local television shows and sort of get them used to being on the air in front of a camera and in front of a live audience and that sort of thing. It's like what we said about having people in the field with falconry. The more people there are, the more likely it is it's going to go wrong. So we had an opportunity to practice with a whole lot of birds, and then I got really lucky because I had some talking and singing birds and Johnny Carson had always had birds on his show, but when they got there, they clammed up. They didn't talk. They didn't say anything for that very same reason. Because it's a foreign environment, it's really scary. So all of our birds were used to that. And he had me on his show. And then after that, he had I must have had 20 years of a dry spell where not a single bird said anything. And after that, he never invited another bird on his show. But he had, they took me out of the show and put me in the anniversary show for 10 years running. And that, so he always had it on the anniversary show. And so that was a lot of fun. And I got to be on the Merv Griffin show, and You Asked For It, and lots of local television shows with talking and singing birds. And that was a lot of fun. And it was, there was just so much momentum there. It just seemed like every week I was doing another show. And it was good fun. And Merv Griffin one time said to me, he said, Dave, he said, I have a studio here, and I'll give you my studio manager's phone number, and you can come here and train your birds anytime you want. And I said, oh, that's nice. And he said, there's one provision. He said, when you get them trained here, I get them on my show before Johnny does.
There's always a catch.
Yeah. So that was in the 80s, early 80s. Mm-hmm. So that was an interesting time, as a result of that. And I don't know, how the bird shows at zoos go these days. We did a lot of things where birds flew over the top of people, and I think probably there's political sensitivities to that these days, and probably just like everything.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, I know there's still a handful at least that are still pretty popular. I mean, one at Disney and everything else, and a lot of which they're have some falconry ties to some degree, I mean, I can imagine though that going from that stuff to this whole journey and kind of coming full circle to owning your own business. I mean, I'm sure there's probably times where it kind of seems surreal for you to think back and some of those things that you did right compared to what you do now. I mean,
I was given opportunity, and I was given opportunity to reinvent myself along the way. Mm-hmm. And so I could, if I wanted to move to England, I could move to England. If I wanted to take a job here, I could do that. And I just used those opportunities along the way. Mm-hmm. And now, and then once I landed here, I did get offered a few jobs in Europe and different places. And I just decided, I'm done traveling. Mm-hmm. I'm going to stay here. And so I had opportunities to move a couple more times. Mm-hmm. And I stayed here, and I started developing my business, my falconry business, which I really enjoy making things. So we probably make about half of everything we sell, mm-hmm. or cause it to be made, and about half of everything we sell we buy in. So it's about 50-50. And in the beginning, it was more like 80-90 percent things we purchased in, mm-hmm. and now it's about 50-50. And we enjoy doing the R&D on just great equipment and getting the best equipment for the best price to the falconers. And, we have a loyal following, and we donate to the falconry clubs every year. Mm-hmm. We like good products being seen on the raffle tables.
Sure.
People can come and pick things up and look at them and go, oh, there's a Western Sporting tag on that. That's where that comes from. Mm-hmm. So we're very generous donating to the archives and to, the different clubs. And that is helpful. It builds a loyalty that advertising, doesn't get.
Sure.
When people go, oh, they gave a lot of stuff to our club. I'll try them first. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, it's kind of one of those other things. It's like a full circle kind of thing. I mean, it's I think people have a little bit more vested interest whenever they understand that other people are trying to do things to kind of, once again, going back to the whole giving back aspect of things, mm-hmm. and contributing in other ways. And if that a lot of times is kind of like a mental, a tiebreaker, so to speak, on mm-hmm. whether or not I'm going to, do business or give business to this person versus another person and all that mm-hmm. kind of stuff, then yeah, I mean, all those things are important. And, it's nice of you to do those things.
Well, when in this business, I have to wear a lot of hats. Mm-hmm. There's the administration of the business, there's employees, there's R&D on products, and COVID made it very difficult to get a lot of things. Mm-hmm. We had a few years there where, our suppliers, just things we would have made for us or purchase in and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Everything became much more difficult and much harder to get. I do not know why, mm-hmm. Because
supply chains,
it's just a supply chain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's understandable. And, I think every business faced that to some degree over the last 3 to 4 years. I mean, it's been a nightmare. And
it has. And it's still not back where it was before COVID.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's still not back.
Yeah. And it's really unfortunate. I mean, it's caused such a strain, and, the shipping prices, in general too have gone up so much, even with just the USPS.
Right.
And yeah, it's been really unfortunate to see a lot of those things happen.
I have things made. I cause things to be made all over the world. You know, I have to do that to compete. All our high-end falconry perches, you know, some of those come from China, some from Pakistan, some from, you know, I get hoods from all over the world, you know, Russia until recently, you know, Pakistan and Peru and all over. But it's a real balancing act, and it's become much more difficult now after COVID, and shipping prices are through the roof.
Yeah.
The shipping prices are just, you can double the price of anything just about if you're going to have it made abroad.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's gotten really nuts in that regard. I mean, for sure. I mean, out of curiosity though, I mean, being as you've been in business for so long and you're kind of at that point that you described where things have kind of evened out a little bit and everything for yourself. I mean, is there anything that you have in mind or, you know, thoughts for the future of different avenues that you'd like to take things, you know, with your business or?
You know, I just want to have the best products at a reasonable price, and I want to service the falconry community. I love helping guys, you know, get safe, reliable, you know, well-designed products, and we do publish books, and I think there's a lot of self-publishing now. People do it; they do it themselves because it's easier to get things printed. And then I think afterwards they find out that they also need a marketing engine.
Yeah. Yeah. Therein lies the problem. There's always the other caveats to that.
Yeah. If you have a title and you want to sell it, you have to have pretty much everything in place that I have. And I have 500 products. And so it's a big job.
Yeah. No, any business, you know, having literally any business is always a never-ending, you know, yeah, it's kind of a never-ending love-hate relationship in some ways. You know, there's always going to be aspects that you're not going to like, and
I can say 90% of the time, I look forward to going to work. There's, you know, Fridays we show up at 10, right, and then. You know, I used to come in on the weekends. I don't do that anymore. You know, so I have a 2.5 day weekend.
Yeah. Fair enough.
You know,
fair enough.
But the rest of the time, I'm there every day, all the time.
Okay.
And
yeah, no, that's cool though. I mean, anytime you can find yourself in a situation where you like what you do and you know, it makes life that much better for sure. It goes without saying, but no, I was just curious though. I mean, I didn't know if there was any other avenues or any other things that you kind of had in mind where you wanted to grow or take things, or you know, if the main focus is still just mainly continuing on, you know, kind of continuing to refine and offer and better versions, or you know, just continuing to tool things what you have right now. You know,
that's it. Yeah, I'm at a point in life where I don't want to go. You know, when I was younger, I was happy to relocate every 7 or 8 years and reinvent myself. And now I'm set. I'm set, and I just want to have the best equipment and the best everything for my customers. I want to have products that I wouldn't give a second thought about using myself.
Yeah, and that's always an admirable outlook. You know, I mean, it shows that you care. You know, and yeah. So, I mean, before we start to kind of wrap things up, though, I mean, I always want to get a good you know, hunting experience or story or two or whatever from people, and then we can come close to wrapping up here. So, I mean, if you don't mind sharing one of your more memorable hunting experiences or stories of a flight or whatever the case might be, it'd be great.
Yeah, I think I had a lot of great flights in Scotland. And, you know, probably my most memorable flights were there with Falcons, and we didn't have eagles there that were pestering hawks. But, you know, I had this one jerkin for many, many years. And he would play games with me. He would stoop on a grouse and maybe just barely touch it. And then he would fly in behind it and push it across the river and then catch it on the other side. And then, I mean, literally right on the other side. And then I'd have to swim the river. And he'd be eating his grouse on the other side while he watched me swim the river. And he did that quite a bit. He did that. And so he was fast enough and strong enough to where he could catch the grouse and he could steer them, you know. And there was one time I used to go see Geoffrey Pollard up in northern Scotland, and he was a barrister in England, and he grew up in a time where he got passage peregrines from the Arabian Gulf and different places. Mm-hmm. And he had a cadge of passage peregrines. That's what he flew in his life. So he wanted me around because I had a couple jerkins, and he was a really good friend of Ronald Stevens. And they never really got their jerkins going that well. They were, you know, cool hawks to have, but their peregrines were like clockwork, and they never really, you know, got the gerfalcons going. And they ended up chasing him a lot, you know. So he liked me having me around, but there were a couple days where I don't know why this particular jerkin would do this. He would take off after a grouse, and he would chase it out of sight and then give up on it. And then, you know, 30 seconds later, he would come in from behind us, and everybody that was there said, "Where'd it come from? How'd that happen?" You know, because he could cover the ground so damn fast. Mm-hmm. You know, so when you fly one for, you know, 10 years or so, you know, they start developing their personality, mm-hmm. and they show you things that you just didn't think were possible.
Sure.
So, you know, so I think my best flights were with jerkins, and I've got a grouse on top of my television right now that was a red grouse that was mounted and taxidermied, and the jerkin was flying really high, and we were going to go down this hill and flush this grouse, and he stooped before we ever got anywhere near the grouse and the dog, and he stooped behind us, went way up a hill, came in at ground level, and just fluttered over and landed on a grouse about 30 feet behind us. And just, you know, he was watching this grouse the whole time. and he wasn't going to have the one the dog was pointing. The grouse never even got to fly. He just landed on it. So, you know, there's, you know, jerkins can do some fantastic things. So mm-hmm. there's a lot of things that, you know, that a lot of experiences I had with jerkins that, you know, I wouldn't get with peregrines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard from a few different people now that they're just seem to be a lot smarter for whatever reason, and it's so much easier to. I mean, if you do things right with them, that you get a lot more of a reward, so to speak, from that. But if you do something that's not so great, that they will forever hold the grudge, so to speak, with them. But you know, I've not ever flown one, and I don't know if I ever will. But you know,
I've chased him across the landscape in Scotland for. You know, I had one that would go very high, and it went out of position, and I lost contact with it. And we didn't have GPS, you know, then mm-hmm. we had just telemetry. Mm-hmm. And he lost track of me. And so I had to drive all the way to the north coast, drive over about 15 miles and down another road. And when I got there, he was back where I released him. So we kept going back and forth for literally 6 hours trying to find this hawk while he was trying to find us. and I finally, after it was well dark, I came back to the original place where I turned him loose, and I could hear the transmitter. And I got up early in the morning and went out, and he was sitting on a rock about 50 feet away from where I turned him loose. So he spent the entire day looking for me, and I spent the entire day looking for him. Mm-hmm. But there's so few roads up there that you had to go way around to try to get anywhere near him. And so he actually, once I sort of mapped it out, I realized he spent his entire day looking for me, you know. but he just got lost in the beginning.
Yeah. And I'm sure that eventually from there you have probably tried modifying things and, just kind of kept that in mind and understood, well, if it seems like he's not, close to it, you'll eventually come back around kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how we develop these understandings, with the birds that we fly like that. It's funny. But, as probably a good note to come close to ending on. I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to add or anything about your, your business? And go ahead and just for those of the people that might be listening to this and haven't heard or done business with you yet. I mean, where can they get stuff from you?
Well, we have a company called Western Sporting, and it's a falconry-based business. We have every manner of thing, perches and books and everything. And we have quality equipment, and we get pretty much everything out the same day. So if we get an order last night, it goes out today. Otherwise, it wouldn't be on the website. The website's so dynamic. We can take a product off immediately or put a product back on immediately. And then that way we're not left with a bunch of back orders, and we don't have to, upset customers with, it's a get it now world. Mm-hmm. Even with falconry gear.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The orders we got last night will be filling in the next hour.
Yeah.
And they'll all go out today.
Sure.
And if they don't, we'll probably hear from some of those customers tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because, thank you, Amazon, for that.
Yeah. Yeah, not everybody can be Amazon, unfortunately.
Right. But we've got good equipment and good people, and we get things out right away. So, and it's all top quality stuff that we would use ourselves. Cool. And we really enjoy sponsoring the raffles at all the clubs. We give to every club in the country.
Cool. That's awesome. And it's always nice to see that kind of camaraderie within the community between some of these businesses and, the different clubs. And I know, all the clubs have to be thankful for that for sure. It's always nice to see that.
Oh, well, we have people that call and write us and just say, I'm shopping with you because, and one guy sent us a note the other day that said, I was amazed. Every book was wrapped in paper. Mm-hmm. It was like, I opened my box and it was like they were gifts. He said, I almost didn't want to open them. Yeah. I just wanted to have them there on the counter all wrapped up because you took such great care in making sure everything arrived perfectly. Yeah.
And you do. I can attest to that also. The times that I've bought things from you and shopped with you and stuff too. Everything always comes out, arrives, well packaged, and especially the books. I remember getting my the special edition of North American Falconry and Hunting Hawks, from you and amongst other books as well. So I appreciate your dedication to kind of having that quality control and like I said, I hope things continue to go well for you into the future. And before we call this good, I'd like to get that piece of advice from you, and that you or sentiment that you'd like to leave to current and future generations of falconers, and we can go ahead and wrap this up. So,
well, the one piece of advice obviously is, fly the hawk for which you have quarry, or move somewhere where you can fly the hawk so that you can hunt the quarry you want to hunt. Falconry, that's how falconry is. It's, BB and Webster realized that early on. You've got to live somewhere where you can fly the type of hawk you want, or you fly the type of hawk for the quarry you have in your backyard. And a lot of people don't like to do that, but that's the golden rule of falconry if you want to get some pleasure out of it.
Sure.
And like you say, if you're hunting starlings or squirrels or all of that can bring a great deal of pleasure. It doesn't have to be, that type of falconry.
Sure.
All of it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. What's mine is not always yours, and what's yours is not always mine,
right.
And I've had tons of fun with starlings and squirrels. And,
you get to see those hawks at their best.
Sure.
That's the whole point of falconry is to present them with an opportunity where you're going to see them at their best.
Yeah, and that's totally true. And like I said, the front row seat is what makes the addiction happen. But
That's right.
But yeah, no, and thank you again so much for making the time this morning before I have to drive back to Rock Springs and unfortunately go back to work tomorrow. I mean, the good news is this is my last little stretch, and then I get to go home for good for a while and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I'm glad that you made the time that we could have this conversation, and I'd like to still, if you guys have time, I'd still like to go over and check things out, before I head back too.
Well, you should probably walk in and check it out, because we've got a giant warehouse, and you wouldn't, when you look at it, you think, oh my, this is really big for a falconry business.
Sure.
And organized.
Yeah.
Anyhow, but if you have time, and we'd like to see you there.
I do.
Okay.
We'll head over there here shortly, and thank you again.
Okay. Thank you.